I do believe that Britain is a racist country, but it is not racist against those of ethnic minority
Why do you
descent.
believe Britain's a racist country?
I don't, because Britain discriminates against the indigenous population. Last year alone, nearly 19,000 girls, overwhelmingly of indigenous descent, so white girls, were groomed, sexually assaulted, raped, trafficked, abused, and in some cases murdered by men of ethnic minority background. And this scandal has been covered up. Now, that is an epidemic. That is a sexual epidemic, or an epidemic of sexual assault. And this is being covered up by the media, by the press, by the government. The police are covering it up. Social services are covering it up. And we are not just second-class citizens in our own country, but we are the victim of this racist grooming epidemic, and no one wants to know about it or talk about it in the mainstream because they would rather cover up the suffering of, over decades, hundreds of thousands of white girls than actually shine a light on the failure of multiculturalism and mass immigration. Yes, Britain is racist, but the racism flows directly towards people of indigenous descent. We're the victims of this racism, and it is institutionalized racism. And you can see this in other ways too. How many groups, how many events, how many special conferences or special days are set up to help people from ethnic minority backgrounds? You only have to go to university. You look like a young lad, you might be of university age. Go to a university, you'll see the Afro-Caribbean Society, you'll see the Jewish Society, you'll see the Union of Muslim Students. If you were at a university and you tried to set up the Union of Indigenous British Students, you'd be shut down and probably expelled. Because there is racism in the UK, but white people are overwhelmingly the victims of that racism. We are denied our culture, we are denied our ways of life, and when we are the victims of horrific crimes, as we've been talking about just now, the police actually cover them up. And I can tell you this for nothing. If 19,000 ethnic minority girls had been abused by white men last year, that would have been the biggest scandal this country had ever known. There would have been mass arrests, there would have been public inquiries, the news wouldn't have shut up about it. There's been one public inquiry into this grooming scandal, and the government have sealed it and are refusing to let the public know the truth. And that's because the extent of the truth is something that, if it got out, would lay bare just how racist the government are against white people, just how much multiculturalism and mass immigration has failed, and just how many white girls have been victims, and just how much the police have been involved in covering up these crimes.
I'm sure the Tories haven't been accused of being racist against white people often, but back to the question of...
Well, they are. I mean, look, the Tories are covering up the grooming scandal. They are the ones who are sitting on the official report into this grooming scandal. Now, over 100,000 people signed a petition demanding the release of this report. Now, any petition with over 100,000 signatures has to be debated in Parliament. This was not properly debated. This is being covered up. And I'll tell you exactly why it's being covered up. Number one, they don't want you to know how many girls have actually been abused. Number two, they don't want you to know how complicit the Islamic community has been in these acts. Number three, they don't want you to know how many government agencies have told social services and the police and other government bodies not to mention this and to cover it up. Number four, they don't want you to know how many girls have been charged by the police or arrested to silence them from speaking out about this. And number five, they don't want you to know how long this has been going on for. This is a scandal of unprecedented proportion, and the government are sitting on the truth and covering it up because they have so much contempt for the indigenous people that they are happy for white girls to get raped wholesale by men of migrant descent, and then they are happy to cover it up and try and sweep it under the
If they're
carpet.
covering this up, how do you know so much about it?
Because when you have so many girls affected, stories leak out. Just like I told you at the beginning of this show, with the case of Eleanor Williams, who's known as Ellie. She has posted her story up on Facebook, and you can see this. We know that over a number of years, in excess of 1,400 girls in Rotherham alone were abused. We've had a whistleblower come out who used to work in Greater Manchester Police, who has admitted the police were specifically told, do not investigate Muslim men. Go and investigate men of other ethnicities, but do not look, specifically do not look into Muslim men and these cases of the sexual abuse of girls of indigenous descent. This is all dripping out, but now an official report has been drafted on this. It's been concluded and it was meant to be made public. But the problem is the official report into this will be so explosive and so damning that what we're seeing here is a government cover-up. And this is from the Conservative Party. This isn't from the Labour Party. This is from the Conservative Party, a party that was meant to be getting immigration under control, a party that was meant to be patriotic, a party that was meant to be a party that stood for British values and for freedom and for the safety of the British people. And they're just as bad as Labour.